Well, hey, and welcome to Overtime, where we take Sunday's message further in hopes that it is helpful for you in your life and your faith. I'm Jeremy, and I'm your host, and today I'm going to be joined by my good friend and our associate pastor, Jordan Geist, and a member of our teaching team who's a volunteer. Her name is Jen Mazzola, as we talk about the series that we've been in the past few weeks called Heart to Heart, From God's Heart to Ours. As always, be sure to hit subscribe, and here we go with this week's discussion. Okay, so what I want to do to kick things off today in our podcast around Heart to Heart is I want to talk about sports.
Oh, yes.
And
Are you going to bring up?
I just want to know.
I know it's fine. Go.
Last time we were just in the hey, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
How big is your God? And now we knew
How big is your God?
Ours is bigger than Bama fans.
I never doubted.
Wow.
So
Did you really never doubt?
I'm just publicly in front of 800 people, but otherwise, no.
It was, and so just for the record,
and just for context, Jordan and I went to UT. Jen's a Bama fan.
we
just
did not
beat
go to
them.
Alabama, but my family is originally from Huntsville. I grew up in Nashville.
Yep.
So I'm like.
Did Sal go, or also Sal just is?
No, so Sal, so he's from New York, born and raised. So he's a Giants Yankees
Makes
fan.
perfect sense
his whole
as a
life.
Bama
So
fan.
he's also Giants played the Cowboys that same weekend, I think.
They
It was
got stomped on.
a terrible
Yeah.
weekend for him.
Yeah.
Terrible weekend. And of course, now he's got friends here that are Cowboys fans, right? So our phones just were blowing up all weekend. But up in New England-y kind of area, there's not a lot of college football, not the same way it is in the SEC, right? So he kind of, when we got married and he moved down to Nashville, he's like, okay, I'm just going to kind of adopt this Alabama thing.
Yeah.
But he's fully in.
So he's been a committed bandwagon for a long time, is what you're saying.
23. First of all, is that an
Committed
old
bandwagon.
He is. That's probably inaccurate. You can marry into a sports team.
It's
I
saying
wouldn't
a
have known
truthful
Yankees
liar.
or Giants.
Yeah.
You can marry into a sports team.
Yeah.
So he married into a Bama
Okay.
family.
Okay.
That's fair, right?
Yeah.
But
so your family were Bama fans, though.
Yeah, my family
Okay,
was
so that's-
originally from
yeah.
Huntsville.
Yeah.
My parents met.
Okay, that's
Their
not
whole
bandwagon. That
Right,
feels
right.
okay.
No, he married into it.
I mean,
loves
it's convenient for him, but
Yeah, I would feel that way if he weren't a Giants fan his whole life too.
Yeah.
And it's that's not been convenient for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, Bama wasn't when I was in high school, because a lot of my friends were Tennessee fans. We would go to the Bama Tennessee game, and Tennessee won every time.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it was a different era.
Well, I'll share with you. I'll share with Jordan my best description of how I feel towards Bama fans right now, because I told you I have a lot of empathy
Oh, that's right.
for the Bama fans. I have zero sympathy.
Yeah.
For Bama
Which
fans.
I think is a valuable distinction.
Yep.
Explain that, because not everybody really
This is a good
realizes
teaching
that.
process.
I
right here.
understand how you feel.
Yep.
I don't care. It's kind of how I would describe it.
That is
You've
perfect.
been eating your ice cream for 10 years, all right?
It's true. I love it. I love it.
So
we showed up. We really debated on coming to church that next
Yeah.
Sunday.
Well, what's fun is that Jen was asking. So, the good context is that Jen texted us the minute Alabama went up. They weren't winning the entire game. The minute they took a lead for about a minute and 30 seconds total of the game, she texts you, me, and Matt, our student ministry director, and is like, "How are you guys feeling?
Yeah.
How are you? You guys doing okay?" Right when Alabama came back.
I wasn't paying attention to the timing. I was
convenient.
more concerned for you
Yeah.
and checking on you.
And then we all replied within a minute and a half when we were up 2 touchdowns again,
And it
saying,
was-
"We're fine. Thanks for checking in,
Yeah.
Jen."
yeah.
Really appreciate
Well, then
that.
at the end of the game, I just sent, "How are you doing, Jennifer?" in all caps.
You know when you use the full name.
Yep.
Good moment.
It has been fun to experience that banter with everybody in the building. And yeah.
In this community.
Yeah, this is when how we say that life is better in circles, not rows, but not that moment. The moment I would have much preferred a row.
That's funny. But even the rows at Northpoint would have been
Yes.
disappointing. I mean,
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
This is
We
true.
do make it hard for some fan bases.
Yeah.
I will acknowledge that.
Yeah.
it's,
But fun.
it's some amount. It's probably a little too much. I don't
Yep.
know. If you're a Sooner or an Aggie, and you really hate
Oh, yeah, you
Texas,
guys do get
that's
this.
good
I don't.
stuff. It's not
We've
like
got-
Alabama hates Texas.
We've
but
got
if
some in
you're-
our group.
No,
in our
Alabama
community
doesn't
group,
care.
and they're making it through
Yeah.
church.
A&M's whole fire thing is that whole ceremony is just based around we have a burning desire to be Texas.
Yeah.
That's the history of it. They hate us. It's
And
okay.
we hate
It's
OU.
okay.
We they're kind of annoying to us.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
but Anyways, all right.
All right. So.
An appropriate amount of sports banter. For you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
because my wife
Cut
gave
now.
me feedback that we talked too much about it.
You can fast forward. You can just jump.
Yeah, you can.
Yep.
So we've been in this
15,
series.
15.
These are good heart-to-heart moments.
Yeah.
So we've been in these. Yeah, I was trying to transition
Good one,
smoothly.
good.
Yeah. But we've been in the series Heart to Heart, saying God's heart to ours, and we've specifically been looking at Luke 15 because it's kind of this picture in these couple of parables, which Jesus, tells parables, made up story to make a point, and it's this picture that he gives of the heart of God. That's arguably one of the best pictures you get within his teachings in the New Testament. You could maybe argue that point, but it's just so specific, and what he's talking to the Pharisees and knowing who is in the crowd. I mean, there's just people go back to these parables over and over and over again because of the significance of them. And, we've been saying this the whole time, that to miss the heart of God is to miss the heart of the Christian faith. Like when we get this wrong, when our perspective, our mental map of the heart of God for us is off, we're missing out on the fullness of life that we think Jesus offers every single person. And so we've been having this conversation going through these different parables, and one of the things that we haven't done coincidentally, because I think we've done this at Northpoint over the years a couple of times, and so we didn't avoid it, but we just didn't spend time, is just unpacking this idea of a heart. And so if we were to just talk about this idea of a heart, how would you guys describe the heart, the philosophical heart that we have and that God has? Just light question to get things going.
The philosophical heart. I mean, I think I might
spiritual,
not understand.
Philosophical, whatever, however you want to phrase it.
Like in my mind, and if I don't answer this correctly, or hit what you're trying to go for, but in my mind, it's more of it's the posture, right? It's like it's like that turning toward, it's that stance toward, that looking for. So it's like, because your heart toward anything is really, in my mind, philosophically like a posture. What posture am I going to take towards you?
Right.
I don't know if that's kind of what you were saying.
Yeah. That's kind of, it's just this heart is like this vague thing that's just like out there.
Well, we just use it all the time. It's like, I heart this, I heart that.
Yeah.
So what is your actual posture toward it? Kind of how do you move toward it? How do you engage with it? How do you hold it, And so I think when you think about the heart of God, it's like, this is his, especially because what I love about this series is that we didn't just look at each parable, we looked at them in their context together, because that's just some strategic teaching from Jesus, right? Like there's such beauty in just that.
There's a layer.
Yeah.
There's a big layer.
Yeah. You could just just so much in that. And I think this is the heart. Here's God's posture toward these different moments.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I looked up a dictionary definition.
In the amount of time it took us.
I thought that'd be helpful.
Dictionary definition of the philosophical heart?
Well, I just looked at how heart is used in New Testament, Old Testament, that kind of thing. But it said there's 5 senses of it, which I was like, it's helpful. It's, there is the physical, but it's typically referring to personality and inner life is one. So it's like your kind of character, personality, all is in there. Your emotional state and consciousness, the intellectual activities of the self, and then your purpose or meaning, it says volition, but purpose. So all of those in addition to the physical. And then it actually says in the Hebrew, it comes from the word center. So it just means the center of
love
you.
it, yeah.
So it's
I like that. Yeah.
It's the core of who you are.
The core.
At the deepest, most simple
defining
self, it's the you.
part of your nature.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It also says that at times it's synonymous with soul and spirit. So it is it's just, it's you. It's it's all encompassing you when we're talking about missing the heart of God. It's the core of God, who God is his foundation, God in his purest sense. We just miss his intention, his emotion, his self, if we're missing the heart of God, or, put that in a relationship, missing the heart, the core of who somebody is. And
right.
Yeah.
That's why it's painful when we feel disconnected with people, because we're missing who they are.
Yeah.
And it can be easy to miss, right? Especially in our human relationships, it can be easy to get confused, whether it's the lens through which we're viewing things. So I totally get why it seems that's cool. They're going to do a series on the heart of God, but no, because it really genuinely is tough to miss. Or easy to miss sometimes. It's tough to always discern because you've been fed so many things for so long. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. Why do you guys think that is? Why do you think it's difficult? Or it's so easy for we can be followers of Jesus. Even if you relate to how a follower of Jesus were to apply this stuff today, it's more in lines of we are the Pharisee. We have missed the heart of God. And that's how Jesus would, maybe say it to a lot of us today, potentially. Why is it so easy that we drift far from the heart of God?
I think there would be a lot of reasons,
Sure.
I think to a degree, it's a little bit like that, the quote of you don't recognize or pay attention to that which is most constant. When you walk in a room and it's 70 degrees, you notice when it's hot or cold, but when there's a consistency in your life, those become the things that are easy to take for granted if you don't have some kind of tools in place to, center you or reconnect or focus on the why. And so when we do this in human relationships, like all the time, human relationships become transactional. We fall into like rhythms and patterns. This is just what we do, and we know our roles and so on. And we haven't like paused and had the moment and like created the space to enjoy each other and connect at that level and so on. So I think to some degree you can get busy in life, busy in your religious activity, and miss the time to create the space, the margin to just connect with, and then obviously like you can have something that derails you. So you can have, in good or bad, I mean, you can have, a painful life circumstance that caused you to question and why, and some of that maybe anger is directed toward God or in God's direction or so on. The idea of any kind of like faith-based advice or counsel just makes you want to throw up or whatever that might be, and then the flip, I mean, like things can be going like really good, and it's like, man, I've replaced God with something else. So, I don't need him currently, and he drifts into the background as I'm experiencing whatever joy, success, pleasure, and all of that. And so he can be in, and you can, well, he is in, but I mean, you can recognize him in both of those. It's not like anytime you're successful, God is gone, and like, but so I feel like those could be reasons. I don't know, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that I think all that, and I'm just like we're naturally made wherever our eyes are looking is where we go, right? Like how you drive. It's like this is like how this just works, even like with physics, right? If I am trying to draw a straight line from one point to another, I have to look at the point I'm going to and not keep my eyes fixed on the line. I just think that God's heart is the same way. Like, what's your intention? What are you keeping your eyes on? Kelsey did a great job at the women's event talking about just Peter and Jesus in the storm, like his eyes are on the waves, and I think that when I'm listening to you, I'm just like, yeah, it's like, where have I stopped intentionally looking in the direction that I'm actually trying to go? Mm-hmm. And so, and when I say intention, like that's kind of even loose, because I think I fell into like older brother stuff just because like I just fell into my personality, and I stopped looking at myself objectively and looking at myself for how I was, what, the phrase we use here all the time, like what it's like on the other side of me. I stopped looking for that. And I just started being on autopilot. Yeah. And so all things I think can be missed when we're not intentionally, seeking to see all different sides. And so.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think it's more tangible, to miss it, in the sense that, like I was processing this morning, I'm going through a book right now, or re-going through a book right now called Abba's Child, which we've talked about probably a lot here. It's one of the Brandon Manning ones. Because
You never bring him up.
I know, right? Because of this series, I was like, I want to reread that. And he talks about we all have an inner imposter, and we have an inner Pharisee, or a lot of us have a bigger Pharisee than others too. And the Pharisee would be the found, right, in these parables. And I would say I relate more with the Pharisee and the elder brother, and it's probably a result of some tangible things in which I've been rewarded by community, like people being impressed or things when I have performed well. And so that's a tangible thing, like, oh, if I check that box, I experience belonging and things that I crave in my inner soul, if I perform well, if I do this. And so I think it's created a little bit in me of like, I must check these boxes, I must keep it together, I must control, because if I don't, there's a fear that I'll lose the things that are most significant in my life. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I think sometimes these we miss it out of a desire for it in a way, because we're longing for it, but we settle for something that's far more tangible, like the approval of others, versus by like finding our ultimate worth and value in the approval of what God thinks about us, which is very intangible. Yeah,
like right? We think we're going there, but actually our eyes are over here, and like we miss the mark because we're just trying to get there a different way. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think too, again, harping on more of the Pharisee side of things, like the space in which I've found myself miss the heart of God the most is when I despise others by being hurt by other people. And I have, Brandon Manning even says that there's two telltale flaws of a Pharisee. The first is he's very conscious of his religiosity and his holiness. When he prays, it is only thanks for what he has, not a request for what he has and is not. And then he says the second is that he despises others. So you admire yourself and you despise others, and that's the Pharisee in you. And I don't know, for me, I miss it because I might get caught up in something that somebody has done, and I'm focused more on that than I'm caught on the porch, that kind of thing. And so, For me, that's where I find myself missing it.
I'm like there all the time. I
Yeah.
mean, actually, it's much better. Someone texted me about our conversation yesterday on Sunday morning, and we're just asking some questions about how it applies in their own life. And I was like, honestly, it does get better. I feel like I am way less angry and way less, I'm still just as critical, but I don't vocalize it and respond in it. Like I still see all the dumb stuff or what I've deemed as dumb, but I just don't feel the urge or necessity to say it as much. Now, that's not how I am as a parent sometimes. Like I've really had to work to not like everything be a critique with my kids. That's really hard because I think there's a part of me that feels some responsibility in that. But like, you know, if I see you guys mess up, I don't really say much.
Just your 7-page emails of feedback. That's not saying much.
I mean, no. like even part of the feedback process here has been hard. Like actually message feedback, not overall strategic feedback. I've got novels for that. But like you know, because I've told you, I'm like, you're like, what's some feedback? And I'm like, well, I mean, we're doing fine. No one died. You know, it's like we could raise the bar a little bit. You know,
yeah.
But I do think that, you know, it for older brothers on the porch, there is an opportunity to come home. Like you're not just destined to be a Pharisee, but to know that's always kind of in you is valuable because at least you can kind of temper it, right? Like you're managing it. And same for the loss. Like, yeah, you're always going to have those moments where it's like, oh, I just feel like all that stuff I did, you know?
Yep.
And it's like, no, you can come on up the driveway.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I think you said this. You talked about Paul being the chief of sinners and...
I did in one service and not in the other.
Not in the other. Okay.
Yeah,
So
but
you had to
actually,
cut it.
Yes, lots of things. But actually, it was because it was a note you made. You talked about like, in your feedback for me, you were mentioning that.
Yeah. Well, that's been one of my own, like in my own personal time with God, realizations is like, okay, if I see the Pharisee in me, how do I undo that? And it's that recognition that both are lost. And okay, cool, that's great. Awesome. How do I do that? And then just more I read Paul and his story and his journey, like he was the found through and through. He was the Pharisee. And then he realized that the actions that he took because he viewed himself that way were the very things that made him the most lost. And so he calls himself the chief of all sinners, when in reality he was the found. I mean, he was the group that Jesus infuriated by sharing this parable. And he's the very one that wrote, you know, half the New Testament and says he's the worst of the worst.
Well, and I think one of the notes I made when you had sent me that note, I was like, you know, and it's funny because he doesn't do that because he misses the law. Like he's not the chief of sinners because he didn't miss the law. He like probably was like excellent in all ways. So it's not that he checked all the boxes. He's calling himself that because of the way he treated people. Yeah. And I think we miss that. Like we're looking at people's behaviors or their choices or their actions, and I get it. But like we think that that's the issue with people. It's really it's a hard issue for them and for us as we're regarding them.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that my counselor told me once, and this is related to the Enneagram, so we're going to nerd out on the Enneagram. I'm a 6, and so one time while I was talking to him, so when I am unhealthy, I exhibit the traits of like the negative traits of a 3. Which 3s are all about achievement. Jordan, you're 3, so you can correct me or affirm me on any of these things.
They don't have negative traits.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like the one personality
The
type.
one number that does not have any negative traits.
So my point with this was I found myself doing that a lot, and I was like, well, how do I stop? And he's like, stop trying to stop doing that and just start trying to do the thing that is good. And it was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And so I think a lot of times if I'm missing the heart of God, how do I stop doing that? Is maybe not always the most helpful question. It's maybe revealing. But how would you guys say it looks like to be in tune with the heart of God in our life? Like if we're to say, this is where we're getting this right, what does that look like? How do we experience being like fully in on the heart of God in our life?
I actually like the Enneagram as a resource.
Yeah.
Well, I think the Enneagram Institute, like what I like about that specific page and explanation from it is this gets a little confusing because there are 9 personality types, but it gives a 1 through 9 ranking, separate set of 9 numbers, for each personality type in terms of health to unhealth. So you can be like, as an Enneagram 3, there's like a level 1 level of health, and there's a level 9 level of unhealth, you know, and everywhere in between.
Oh, wow.
And so as you read through
it's
them
helpful
all,
that they made that 9 instead of 10, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, as you read through them all, the 9, again, not the Enneagram 9 personality type, but the 9 level of unhealth is essentially like they're all sociopaths or like murderers. It's like, it's crazy. It's like very aggressive, right? Yeah. And the level 1 is like Jesus. I mean, it's like this, you know. So as an example, let me just read the level 9 for an Enneagram 3 is become vindictive, attempting to ruin others' happiness, relentless, obsessive about destroying whatever reminds them of their own shortcomings and failures. Psychopathic behavior generally corresponds to narcissistic personality disorder. So that's the level 9 unhealth. And then the level 1 health is self-accepting, inner-directed, and authentic, everything they seem to be. Modest and charitable, self-deprecatory, deprecatory humor.
Self-deprecating humor would be what I would say, but
deprecatory.
You make fun of yourself. Yeah.
Self-deprecatory
Hey, way to be
humor.
in level 1 right now. You nailed it.
Yes, you're doing it real time. This is real.
Yeah. Wow, you're so humble.
Just doing what I can.
Yeah.
And fullness of heart emerge, gentle and benevolent. So that's like almost more granular than I think even your question was. But it's like, really, if you were to do a little bit of work, if you like that one as personality type, and that's actually kind of what it would look like. That if I'm really connected to, that's what I become. You're gonna like see that tangible. So it's not like a head knowledge, it's not a smartness. It's not even like I've cleaned up my life per se. That might be like a end result. There'll be some self-control and there'll be some habits in and out of your life, but it focuses like a lot more on this like centeredness, this self-awareness, this generosity towards others, this like peace, this, that you start to see. So,
but I think that it's really important with your question and your comment, like that this is going to look different for each of us as individuals, right? Like even this older, younger nuance is like, it's not like, there's a list, and if I act like this, then I'm no longer an older brother. Like, so, and it's really just about figuring out what you need to do to be your healthiest version. So like for me, I need to be less offended. That's always a good thing for me to work on, right? But like for my husband, who's a different personality, he can actually stand to be a little more offended, right? Like, I mean, just because like stand up, but not like have like, he doesn't really get
Like
feisty,
be bold,
be bolder. Like he can get feisty with me, but like he's really laid back. So like, what would it look like to be too laid back versus like leaning into some of that? Some of us, our older brother just needs to stop talking, and then others like, no, say the thing. So I think it's actually really important to know you, and to know where God might call you into coming off the porch or coming up the driveway, because it will look different for different variations of personalities and experiences and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. Because like I don't think everybody is like, well, when you stop talking, then you're no longer an older brother. No, actually, you can be an older brother and you just never say anything because that's not your temperament. So there's something else God's working on in your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, if you guys were to like make it super practical. So I think that it feels like the Enneagram is a really practical example. Yeah. And I don't think we provided context for it for anybody who hasn't heard that before, but it's just one of those personality type profiles, but it's a very, very, it stood the test of time, I think, in a way maybe others haven't. Like, it's been around for quite a while, as far as I understand it, and I think it's also just very in-depth. And it's more like less work-based and more just personality.
Did I introduce you as an Enneagram coach the first time you were on this podcast?
You did. The first time I ever talked to you was about the Enneagram.
Yeah, so and it's been around. You're the expert. It's been around for a while,
It's been around a long time. Well, we don't really know. But long enough to not know.
Yeah.
And I do think, like, someone texted me about Sunday and they said, I loved that you said that you see things half empty and you're okay with that God kind of made you that. That was the Enneagram. Yeah. Like, I don't think I really realized, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Like, this is part of, like, this makes so much sense. This is why everything feels this way when I see this. This is why I respond. But like, I'm reading, I can remember discovering the Enneagram, like reading some of this stuff to my husband. He's like, I don't even understand why you would think that way. Well, it's because he's not me.
Yeah.
But then I would read his stuff and I'd be like, why in the world does anybody think this way?
Yeah.
So it is a tool that I think really gets down to the core of, honestly, the core of your heart. It's really a heart tool much more than some of the other tools. They're all great. But like, you'd have like a Myers-Briggs, or you have a 4 temperaments. Like, you have these other awesome tools, strengths, right? I mean, there's tons of great tools out there to know yourself better. Take them all. But the Enneagram is a heart tool.
Yeah.
Like, if you're using it and you're not transforming your heart, then you're just not, it's become a parlor trick. It's just for fun. You're not really using that tool, because it can transform your heart, but it doesn't change it to make you not you. It just has you fully see you.
Yeah. Yep.
And accept you.
Right.
It's almost like it's like it's like, but like, it's like God's way of saying, no, I see, I made you that way. I wasn't worried about where you were. I wasn't worried about you being on the porch. I just want you to come home because I already made you. I knew all this about you.
Yep.
That's, I feel like I really like you even saying the example of the half glass empty, and that's, understanding yourself and that being the Enneagram, because I think I had like a similar process, and it was like the Enneagram that was a really helpful tool where I had a season where I demonized like all forms of ambition and like hard work. And I was like, for me, that is always me out of some insecurity, trying to prove myself, care about my image, care of what people think about me. So like I achieve to be enough and like that. So kind of anytime I'm doing that in any area, that's like, there's something wrong there. It's like showing this,
Yeah.
But the next healthy one, like level of that thing says, ambitious to improve themselves, to be the best they can be, become outstanding, human ideal, embody widely admired cultural qualities, highly effective. Others are motivated to be like them in some positive way. Like there was this idea to say like, okay, God like has wired me to work,
Yeah.
But it's like, man, when I'm working for me or my name or to cover, or I'm willing to cut corners or to lie or deceive or whatever it is, that's all it manifesting itself in like building my kingdom and sabotaging what I most value. Whereas like when it's this kingdom minded focus and being open for whatever he's called me to do and work at whatever I do with all my heart, and, like there's a good like right way that's, so it's just interesting. It was helpful for me to be like, okay, like kind of do that inventory. And so there's a bunch of, this came in, turn into Enneagram, little marketing pitch real fast, but like there's free tests and people can look at it and,
don't do a free test. Don't. But anyway, yeah.
The Enneagram coach says don't do free tests. So.
Jordan, and also Jordan, just for the record, the paid for test says I'm a 6. The rest of them I don't know, but just so you know.
Because I was trying to tell him he's a 5, which you're not allowed to type other people. And
yeah, like the number one rule, but we're always doing it.
Yeah. Oh, you're definitely this. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I do. What's funny is when we are trying to figure out how to respond to God, we often cut out parts of ourselves that is like exactly what he already gave us, right? It's like, I think of, particularly for women, like some women want to stay home and some women want to work, but we struggle with being honest about those feelings and those thoughts because we feel like somehow we got to cut off a part of ourselves. Like somehow if I choose to work, I'm cutting off the mom part, or if I choose not to work, I'm cutting off the ambition part. It's like, no, it's not. I mean, I think God just looks at us like, no, I mean, I'm going to call you to different things for different seasons. Let's just do this together.
Yeah.
Can you come to the party with me? Because it's going to be a different theme every time, and just hold like, that's like coming back to your even like the philosophy of God's heart. It's just like, he just like holds it way more open, but he's still holding.
Yeah. Yeah. A mentor of mine says like, we just should ourselves to death all the time.
Yeah.
Is what he says. Okay. And we just operate with like, well, I should be a stay-at-home mom, or I should work, or I should this, or I should this, versus like learning how our heart has been created by God and just operating out of that wholeness. You don't should yourself in that kind of.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep
that going.
Yeah, keep that going. That's how I think about it. But yeah, I would just I know it's an Enneagram commercial. I would just add to it though, like.
But back to the Enneagram.
But back to the Enneagram, because it really is about like kind of a picture of your heart. Like there were seasons where I'm surrounded by Enneagram 3s here at Northpoint. With Josh and Jordan and Buck and even your brother and maybe some 8s too who are pretty like just hardcore.
Josh is a 3?
Josh is a 3. Yep. If you want to get him to do anything, just tell him he can't. That's how I've approached him. So
accurate.
Noted.
He says accurate. But because of that, I was like, because I'm not driven or ambitious like that, like something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Versus like when I'm at my best, I'm recognizing like, I'm just more of like a systems guy. I see details well. I see potential like ways in which it's not going to go well, and I can lean into that and I can make sure things go better. And when I'm operating that way, there's this like freedom. This like it's spiritual almost. It's not just like a mental thing. There's a spiritual like, oh God, I'm living out your design, like your heart for me. I'm feeling it more in my life when I'm operating this way.
And you're probably more successful. Like, I mean, like it's satisfying, and you actually are just better at it because you're just being who you're made to be.
Yeah. And the ironic thing is I don't care as much if I'm successful because I'm just like.
It's the craziest thing.
It's just wild. Yep.
It's almost like the Lord is.
It's almost like
got a
there's
plan.
Design there. Okay, so let's move on to the next question.
Off the Enneagram, yep.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, but you can't say it again.
Trying to find which question came after the Enneagram question.
Yeah, so I mean everything in the parable pointed to where Jesus was looking at the Pharisees at the very end. And when we read it, and maybe we didn't read it in its entirety at any point, but just to reemphasize, like the Pharisees would have been furious because they know exactly that he's talking about them, and he's calling them out in front of this whole crowd. Like he is just pointing his finger at them. So they're having this moment where they're like, Jesus is telling us we're missing the heart of God. And if anybody else is listening and feeling that conviction, that burden, we've talked about, the Enneagram a little bit here as one practical thing. I know I said it again, but what are other practical things just that if you guys would say, because this is a little bit of a intellectual slash, I don't know, just it's a heart posture thing. So it's not black and white, but if you guys were to put some practicality behind it for someone who's going, man, I'm missing the heart of God, like how would you encourage them to reorient themselves?
I have a list in my head. I mean, I think get a mentor is always someone who is willing to reflect what it's like on the other side of you, because they can often see like your heart better than you can. I mean, the person that said that to me was, at the time, you know, I was on staff at a church and he was my senior pastor, and he just was really honest with me, you know? And so, but I felt safe and I trusted him. So that's, I think, a different nuance. So I think get someone that you feel safe and trust, that can just listen to you and catch words, you know, like catch like, hey, that sounds like that's achievement, or that sounds like this is about you and not actually about them, or this sounds like you're trying to you know, those kinds of things. So I think that's a good one. I mean, I'm always going to be a fan of like, just, you know, get still, get quiet. You know, for me, it's morning time. Like just get something to read and just be still and listen for just a little while to whatever kind of pops up. I know it's kind of like the overstated time with God, have your quiet time thing, but I just like it's a game changer. Like we were talking before I think we started recording about like I hadn't had a chance to eat today because of all my meetings. You're like, well, are you foggy? It's like, but I'm foggy if I don't get that time. Mm-hmm. I am. I mean, I'm going to be a little more fractious, a little shorter. And so, I mean, I know those are kind of the go-tos, but like, I'm just serious. Like my mentor and my time with God is literally transformative in my life.
Yeah.
She's the reason I wore that blazer that Josh made fun of.
Really?
My mentor is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Keep going.
I think called it a lab coat? What do you call it?
Yeah, he called it a lab coat.
Yeah.
Professor Jen.
Yep.
Yeah, don't let any of us speak to your fashion. It's like none of us here, Josh included, are qualified. He dresses better than we do, but like goodness, like.
But yeah, those would be my two. Like get a mentor or consider getting a mentor. And we've got actually, and Northpoint's one of the few churches that I'm actually familiar with, because in my normal job, I get to network with a bunch of churches in town, and I don't know many, if any, that have a mentor, like an actual mentor program where you can actually contact someone and actually get a mentor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and there's other ways to find. I mean, if you can't find a mentor, or for whatever reason a program doesn't work out. I mean, we talk about counseling all the time. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to do it. And then even just being in a small group, like oftentimes I find people with people who are really wise with influence, they're not like seeking out people to mentor. They just like, you know, if you ask, hey, can I just have coffee with you? And would you mind doing this once a month? You know, and that just begins a journey of something that could be really significant in someone's life. Yeah,
I would say if anybody approaches you to mentor you, I would probably find someone else like that is a little like, I need to mentor you.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe run.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, I think you already have a note on it here in this document, but in this specific parable, like it is forgiveness that's keeping him on the outside, you know, of the party. Like that, there's a specific relationship, a specific wrong, you know, and that feels like it probably commonly is the thing, you know, in an older brother posture, like you referenced earlier, like it's a somebody, you know, so that feels, you know, and similar to an Enneagram plug. I don't know if we want to do a whole, forgiveness is its own, you know, series and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. We've got all the quick phrases to say, like it's a process, you know, it's not in a moment, it's not overnight, it's not. And
we've done some episodes. We can even reference a couple of those in the description.
Put one of those in the descriptions because we just have a lot to say about it. But, I mean, that feels like one massively. And I think like, you know, too, like if you've never walked in to the party of the celebration, like just, you know,
just go give it a shot, try it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, almost like begin a relationship with Jesus, you know. I think we were talking, I think maybe second service, did it happen second service, the ending?
I tried.
Yeah. So for your first service audience and then, you know, as a recap for second service.
Share the point that you shared because you said it so perfectly, honestly.
Well, no, it's just the idea. One of the things that really stands out to me, and especially when we spent like 3 whole weeks in it and so on, but it's really fascinating that you see that the sheep is returned. You see that the coin is returned. You see the younger brother go home. We don't know with the older brother. It doesn't mean he didn't go in, but Jesus very intentionally ends it there because that's the challenge. You were already alluding to the fact that he's challenging these Pharisees to say like, you have to decide. And it puts an ownership on the audience to be like, do you want to go in or not? You're not currently in the party. Like, do you want to do it or not? And so that's what's like one of these really beautiful, like artistic things about him. And we've called him like master communicator. It's just so on display in Luke 15. But And I think that's a choice for each of us to make, to say, like, if you've never made the choice, like, if I can be bold enough to, I was like, hey, make it, or what's holding you back, or what is there, and so on. To say, what if I followed Jesus? Like, what if I took that step? And so, I think that would certainly be a hope of an outcome of 3 weeks on a Luke 15, is to be like, I'm ready. Let's do this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just hearing the grace, the love, unconditional. And I was just going to add, it's kind of a component of what both of y'all said, but I like what Brandon Manning says. He's like, be alone with the alone. You know, like the one who can provide for you alone everything that you desire.
Yeah. And
just being alone with God. And then in that, and in the same vein of forgiveness, like just sitting at the cross of Christ. Like, I know that, and that's metaphorical, but there's a literal sense of just like closing your eyes and sitting at the cross of Jesus. And it's a gruesome scene, and it's got a lot of rainbows and butterflies sometimes painted on it, but it's far from that. And when the Pharisee in me sees a drop of blood coming off of Jesus, in my mind, for me, I mean, there's nothing that like brings me home and closer to the heart of God than that realization. And that's true if you're hearing this for the very first time, and like you said, like it's come home, like that's for you, like that sacrifice is to make you right with God. Or if you've been following Jesus for a long time and you've drifted and you've forgotten it, like the more you can sit at the cross of Christ, it's just going to bring you home to what the heart of God wants for you.
I don't remember if we covered this in week 1, they all kind of bleed together, but like, I think that the nature of the lost things in the parable, like the series is pretty beautiful in and of itself, right? Like the coin can't lose itself. Like someone had to lose. There are reasons that we are lost that sometimes we just didn't ask for. We just ended up in certain circumstances. We never asked to be lost in that regard. Then you got the sheep, who's just kind of a sheep, So it's kind of like, those are the moments when I'm like, I'm lost because I just do dumb stuff sometimes. I don't necessarily even mean to. I'm not like fully even conscious of it. I'm just an idiot, like sometimes. And then there's the lost from rebellion with the son, right? Like I am frustrated, or I am wanting to do what I want to do. And then there's this other level of loss that never gets concluded. But so I just love that Jesus is kind of like nodding to, like, there's all sorts of reasons that we get lost. Some we didn't ask for, some we just made a dumb mistake, some we intentionally rebelled, and then some we just forgot. And so I just think, like, just sit in that. Like, let God show you, like, hey, you didn't ask for that. Hey, that was stupid. Stupid sheep, And then, hey, you're rebelling in that. And then, hey, come in, that kind of thing.
I was going to say, one of the places in which I feel my lostness the most right now is just having 2 kids under 2. Like, you
did ask for that.
Yeah, actually. I mean, yes, it was me. But I'm just like, I don't think I feel like I have any question about sin in my life, with like how quickly these little ones can like get anger and impatience boiling up in me, and how humbling it is to go, I might think I'm in control and I'm a loving person, but then boom, something happens, and I'm like it. Oh man, I am so full of it, So I just have lots of kids. It's one really practical way. Jordan's got his eyes big right now.
That's like the reason.
It'll be fine. Yeah,
I'm not worried about that being the reason to have kids, but yes, it will happen.
Yeah, it's just so humbling. It makes me feel very lost in a really profound way.
Well, I'm a number 1 on that the health scale, so it'll be good.
That's right. We all you read that. Thank you.
There's no temptation for Enneagram 3s to shame their children.
No, there's not going to be any achievement parenting right there. Not at all.
Yeah. Woo. Can't wait to watch your kids play sports.
I mean,
to dominate sports.
Every comment, you're going down a number on the list. You were at like a 7 when we started the podcast. Yep. You're like a 5.
Oh, man.
Not a 9, though. Not a total narcissist.
No, not a total narcissist.
In case you were worried, you're not.
You're not psychopathic.
To wrap up, I feel like this question is like easily answered, but I think it's worth just a quick discussion. Just how would this impact the church, the perception of Christianity, if we were to get the heart of the Father right better? What would it do differently than what has been done broadly, Big C Church?
I mean, my first response is everything. It would make a disengaged generation that feels like church isn't relevant, or a space for them to feel like. I think I would have gone to church earlier. I mean, church hurt, church people was what kept me from church until later in life. So I know that's like an oversimplified answer, but just everything would be different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think about like Acts 15, like James saying in 15:19, like it's my judgment. We cannot make it difficult, for the Gentiles who are turning to God. And like, I think it's like 10 verses before that. I think it's Peter that's up and talking, and he's like, Like, why are you putting a yoke on them that like we can't fulfill on ourselves?
Yeah, we can't do. Yeah.
And then I think he literally says like God who knows the heart, like God who knows the heart of men, like, and it's by grace. And it's just, it's just like from the very beginning, like this first church meeting, like we know about, is like this is what it was supposed to be and meant to be. And so I think it's like in that is very like we make it difficult when we get this wrong. We make it simple and easy when we get it right. And so I don't know what the statistics would be, but if you just went and surveyed random people on the streets in America, I don't think a lot would be like, man, yeah, church is easy to get involved in. Jesus is easy to follow, in terms of people that aren't engaged in church. So yeah, it feels like it would have tremendous impact if the church got this right.
Yeah. For sure. I think of the proverb, guard your heart, everything you do flows from it. And if the heart of the church, and I'm not saying all church experiences have been negative, like holistically, but generally there's a stigma that there's a lot of bad ones. And if the heart of the Big C church has been one of judgment and shame and all of that, and that's come from the people, then there's obviously been something that's been missed. And I think that's why, we want people to come to Northpoint on Sunday. We want them to rub shoulders with people. And, like Jesus said, this is how you're going to know these people are my disciples, by how well they love one another. It's not their doctrine. It's not fancy stuff. It's not great music. It's like, that's all fine, but it's how they love one another. And the way we can more be in tune with the heart of God and see other people's hearts, I think people are going to see Jesus a lot more clearly, And so, yeah, well
said.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. But I'm going to wrap us up here.
I intentionally didn't tell the Enneagram 3. Well said. I was like,
nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Well said, Jordan.
Well, it's 4:00. It's about the time I get really unhealthy.
Okay.
So
okay.
yeah, it actually fed the unhealthy part of my Enneagram number. But we've been in this series, Heart to Heart. We just pray and hope for anybody who's been watching and listening that, it really is something that challenges you in your faith, whether you've been following Jesus for decades or you're brand new or haven't taken that step yet, that this just draws you closer to the heart of God. And I would say too, just because there's been a couple of side conversations that I've had, if there is somebody that you feel like would benefit from these types of conversations, I would just encourage you to share on Instagram or YouTube or the website. Just send people the link of a video. Hey, this could be helpful, or this could be, I've heard a lot of people say, man, I wish I would have heard that a long time ago, or that was really liberating to hear that, that the heart of God is different than that experience that I had at that church or with that pastor or whatever that might be. And so I would just encourage you to share if that person comes into your mind, and perhaps it's something that could help them draw closer to the heart of God as well. And so this week we are kicking off a new series called The Story of Northpoint, and I'm really excited about it because once a year we do a vision series in hopes that it just helps people who are new know what it looks like to take a next step at Northpoint, or know what it looks like to take a next step in their faith, or just know more about the heartbeat behind our church. And then those that have been coming for a long time, it's just reorienting for us in a really significant way too. So I'm really excited. We're gonna see you guys either live or in person or on demand later on Sunday. We'll see you then. Thanks, guys.